Welcome to Doors to Hope and Healing, an inside look at the many facets of work that is happening at the Department of Children and Families, between our staff, the families we serve, and our community partners. My name is Jaqueline Ford. I have had the honor of working for the department for almost 30 years. And although I may be familiar with many of the topics we bring to you, I have invited experts in those fields to help us dispel the myths and misconceptions that can often be barriers to our work. Join us as we open our doors and invite you to have a seat at our table. Karina, it is a privilege to have you on our show today and to hear your story and for you to share your tender story with all of our viewers who are going to be watching and be so inspired by you. I know that your story starts with an unthinkable tragedy that you had experienced and what brought you to be the legal guardian for your granddaughter, Olivia. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us about what happened in that journey and what happened to your daughter that brought you to this place in your life right now?
Absolutely. First and foremost, thank you so much. It's the honor and privilege and is all mine. So you want to jump right in there, right?
Yes, I know. And take your time. I know this is a heavy, tender topic for you, for anyone.
It is for anyone. Murder is not always an easy subject to jump into, and when you couple that with it being your child, your firstborn, who you figure as a parent would bury you. Sorry.
That's okay. How old is Olivia? Let's start there.
Okay.
How old is Olivia?
Olivia's 9.5.
She's 9.5.
She will be 10 in October.
Okay.
She is a very vivacious. She's the rock of my everything. She's the one that centers me. And as you can tell, by how hard it is to talk about the murder. It's not just the murder of my daughter, but also my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter. She was 9 at the time. So it's kind of in a surreal type of place that I'm in right now because Olivia is 9.5, and I'm just grateful to Jehovah God that, we're able to get to that. She now is my second oldest grandchild. I have 5 grandchildren. My Jaya and my oldest grandson, they both would have been 16. They turned 16 this year. And so then the next is Olivia. So it's bittersweet.
Sure.
She's
going to be double digits.
Double digits.
That's
so
exciting.
As she tells me, she's a pre-tween.
Oh, they're starting young with that whole tween stuff. Huh?
Goodness. Social media, I don't have anything against it because there's really good aspects to it, but
absolutely.
Social media does make parenting very difficult now.
It does.
Especially, I'm not trying to age either one of us, but I am up there in age. So coming from that aspect where, we didn't even have social media growing up, or it didn't really even start in my teen years. It wasn't until in my mid-20s, I believe it was, that no, not even mid-20s, maybe late 20s, early 30s, where social media really started becoming, in the forefront. And it wasn't even as big.
No, it wasn't the
as
core
it
of
is
life.
now. Right.
Now it's
I
the
think
center.
we just had MySpace and then from there to Facebook.
Yeah, AOL.
So not trying to AOL, not trying to give any of them any, publicity or anything, but just putting into perspective where we are now. We have such this vast social media platform that is very good because we're able to connect on in different areas and countries and different things where we never could have or even imagined, with me growing up. You can only read about those things at the library and the encyclopedia. So with that aspect, with her going into those double digits.
Yes, still too young to be navigating that type of world.
That's where it becomes a little convoluted and complex because she is navigating all of that and all of its complexities, but then coupling that with grief and trauma, which circling back to your original, what happened to my daughter, was the murder. She was murdered by her live-in boyfriend of a few months. Not the father of any one of my grandchildren, her two daughters, who also in turn murdered my oldest granddaughter. And unfortunately, Olivia was a witness and the only survivor. And so this past year, we have been dealing with a lot of vivid recall, which is where she's recalling the images or even, certain scenes that are coming back to her. And, already at a tender age of trying to navigate just life at that age, right? As we talked about with social media and different things like that. It gets even more difficult when you have to deal with those traumas.
Sure.
And she remembers her mom,
How old was she when she lost her mom?
2.5.
So she has memories of her mom.
She has memories, but I keep those memories alive because I'm not here to replace my daughter. My daughter did a fantabulous job, Unfortunately, we can't control the actions of others. We can just control our own actions, So I'm not here to replace her, but I want to honor her. I want to honor her as a mom, as her mom, and know that she did an excellent job and just carry on that job that she's doing, her legacy, and it's difficult because you can't put into perspective the relationship that two sisters would have. So it's a little bit more complicated to try and keep Majea's memories alive with her sister. But it helps because Majea was the one that was able that she was trying to get them out of the house. So it helps that, she sees her as her savior, her hero
in that story.
So,
her story.
Right. So even as convoluted as it is, just keeping that aspect alive helps tremendously.
It's so important that Olivia has you as her relative and her grandmother who's going to keep her mom's, legacy alive. How do you talk to your granddaughter about what happened? And is it something that you had try to reframe and try to not talk about obviously the details of all of that, but how do you keep her mother's life very much alive in her heart and in your hearts?
So I apologize for the tears.
Yeah, no, please don't apologize for the tears.
But from the onset, trying to navigate that, I didn't know how to do this, how to be able to put in perspective what she had gone through for her to understand it at 2.5 and why she's no longer seeing her mom.
Sure.
Right? And then to go each year thereafter to keep those memories, those happy memories alive. So there's different things in which I do. We do talk about it because I do not want her to suppress anything, especially now with her having vivid recall. As excruciating as it is, to have those, but you have to have those difficult conversations, especially with kids that have gone through severe trauma as she has, right? Because if you don't, then they can break into other problematic areas, right? And it can anywhere from stunting educational recall, to be able to absorb, educational absorption, that's the word I wanted to get, and to be able to recall it, to be able to use it, stunting mentally, they can be stuck in that time frame, stuck as a child. They can have developmental delays. And so to be able to express it in their minds, the way, in their verbiage is vitally important. So I have never tried, and I never will, try to stifle her talking about it. And also, too, it lets them know as a caregiver that you not only can empathize and sympathize with them, but you're going through it too. You understand and you can relate
Sure.
to where they're, you know, even though they're younger, but you still have those commonalities of grief, right? And those feelings are not isolated, because you can feel isolated and alone, especially with children. They can feel like they're alone in dealing with this. But if they know that they have a parent, they have a guardian, they have someone that is there that's going through those same type of emotions, feelings, and grief, then that makes it you bond better, right?
Sure.
And it makes it more relatable to conversations and those difficulties of raising a child, right? They're not as difficult because you do have those common grounds, you know.
And you lost your baby. I mean, this is this is a mother's worst nightmare, and you being able to grieve through this with your granddaughter is helping both of you. And I know that through your tragedy, you have started your own. It's called Mothers of Victims of Equality.
Mothers of Victims Equality,
Inc.
So, unfortunately,
Yes.
I do have to correct that a little bit for you.
Please do.
Mothers of Victims Equality didn't start in 2017.
Okay.
Sorry. Unfortunately, in 2013, we tragically lost my daughter. She was a sophomore at Eastern Connecticut State University. Her boyfriend of 4 years, who she was coming out, which we all know with domestic violence, exiting out of a relationship, a volatile relationship can be very fatal, very dangerous for women. And unfortunately, that happened to my Alicia. Like I said, she was a sophomore. She majoring in psychology, minoring in biology. So she had her life ahead of her. She was in college ever since she was a sophomore in high school. But unfortunately, again, you can't control the actions of others. He murdered her, and he dismembered her.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And but prior to us finding that out on May 18th at 5:13 a.m., there was an intense, almost month, 27-day search that went on prior. And I just knew my baby, we were going to find out. I thought he had her. And but I'm saying that to say we didn't get support. The community came out, but I found out that there were so many agencies, so many organizations, so many services that were out there, and unfortunately, none of them came to us. And so during that time period, and trying to, get my mind, because I wasn't sleeping, trying to get my mind ready and wrapped around what it looked like once my baby came home, I started researching a lot of things and trying to understand, about even educating myself on the vastness of domestic violence and, what it entailed, and learning so many things through the investigation and searches that was going on. And I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even know that that's what it was. But there still was no one there to educate us. And in looking at it, I was like, why not? Why isn't there an organization out there, a grassroots organization that's going to the people, or sending someone, or, ensuring that they have the proper information and support services that they need. And so that's how Mothers of Victims Equality came about. And knowing that, on my spiritual journey as well, that I was told by Jehovah God that this is bigger than me and my family. This is bigger than me and my daughter. And he commissioned me into this work. This is not something that I chose. This is not like, oh, okay, well, let me do this. I didn't know how to run an organization. I didn't know how to start one.
But you wanted to provide other grieving families with, or even, to prevent this tragedy from happening if possible.
If possible, especially in the Black and Brown community, because there was so much inequalities and disparities, you know, and gaps. And I had so many families that came out to help with the searches wherever we went. And they were like, thank you for talking about this. Thank you for bringing light to the fact that there's no one out there that's helping us, that's giving us this information. I didn't even know that there was so many. I just thought it was all physical. I didn't know. And I thought it was just something that happened, you know, to people in a certain socio-economical status, you know,
Someone else.
Yeah, someone else. You know, and so being able to just have that to help me, it was really selfish too, because that was how we were as a family able to start our healing journeys. And my daughter, unfortunately, in 2017, at the time, she was the vice president
Of your nonprofit.
of our nonprofit.
I think that your nonprofit, the way it was developed was selfless, because you did that to help others. And although it may have helped your grieving, the amount of people that you have helped since then and continue to help. So how were you able to use your own nonprofit and the work that you were doing to help yourself through another unspeakable tragedy? It's just too much for one family to ever endure. And your granddaughter is so blessed to have your strength to get her through this.
It's not me. You know, as we all say, it's nothing but for the grace of God that I go. And it's nothing but for his merciful grace and sustaining power that I'm even able to sit in front of you. And even though I have the tears to be able to articulate and to be able to run an organization, right? So again, like I told you from the onset, Olivia is my rock. She's what is keeping me together. She's the glue that's holding me down, right? So I have to say that because the organization, yes, has been an aspect for me to be able to divert my grief into passion and to be able to utilize that with the respects of the research and everything and helping to service our communities of answering and finding ways to, if not bridge the gaps, but close them. Right, especially in our Black and Brown communities, where we always talk about how there's a lack of services, or how our families fall through the cracks more effortlessly than anyone else, right? So with that being said, that's bringing all of that into the forefront and utilizing the organization to destigmatize domestic violence, to encourage, to educate, and to empower those families. You know, one of the things that came after everything came to light in a documentary about our family in 2019 was that how could one family have so much tragedy around domestic violence? There must have been that in the home. There must have been. And so not to derail those thoughts, but to have those thoughts as fuel power to say, listen, you know, it's not something that has to do with what goes on in the home, although it does. It could very well be, but that's not necessarily. You have to understand, my daughters were adults. One was 20 and one was 29. So, you know, does the things in which our home environment determine how our lives are going to be? Absolutely. But when it comes to domestic violence, that's a stigmatization. That's not a fair assessment to families when tragedy hits multiple times, because it's not necessarily, not putting myself on the defense, but just on the offense of all those families out there that need to fully understand it's not always you. It's not always you, especially when you're talking to your family members, especially when you're providing supports for your family member. You have to understand this is something that happens on this level, on these fatalities, these different, because there's so many other situations and circumstances, like we talked about, that's all encompassing of domestic violence. But when it comes to fatalities such as this, when it comes to another human being hurting someone, and in this detrimental capacity, then it's between those two. That for whatever instance, you can go from 0 to 1,000 instantaneously within milliseconds, right?
Changes.
Right, and the whole world, for not just those two people anymore, but for everyone. And this goes from just their house to the family's homes, to the community, to the first responders, to other homes. Anyone that has been involved in that one instance, in those milliseconds of not rationally thinking out your actions, how it affects thousands.
Yes.
So that's where, coming back to what you were talking about with the organization, that's how it has changed from 2013 to 2017, realizing that we had to pivot just from not giving the awareness and the educational factor, but now empowering, engaging, and telling everyone that, the intersectionalization of domestic violence, and most importantly, how to apply what you've learned.
And you evolved over the course of those years.
And we're still evolving, because it's ever evolving with domestic violence. It's ever evolving. It's again, not to sound redundant, but it's all encompassing of so many different systems and platforms that you can't just quantify it and just saying putting it in a little square box, because it's not. You can't box this up.
No, it's
because
different.
if you box it up, that's why we have such a problem in trying to combat it the way we do, because we're trying to quantify it in a box, and you can't. It's too vast.
So let's talk about Olivia again.
Yes.
Something positive and bright.
Thank you.
And
So
something
sorry.
to keep. No, not at all. I mean, what you have done and the tragedies that you have faced has made it better for so many other people, because it isn't someone else. And I think that you're a perfect example that it's there by the grace of God go I. It could be any one of us who has themselves or their child or a grandchild, someone involved in an intimate partner violence relationship, a situation like that,
or any toxic relationship. And that's the thing where the intersectionalization comes in at, most importantly, is the toxicity of relationships. And that's what we're focusing on this year, evolving into understanding that, if we could give domestic violence another name, we would. But if we could, it would be toxic relationships or toxicities.
And how to identify
and
that.
how to identify the toxicities, and how to be able to live, work, and walk through them, right? Because that's so vitally important for our own sustaining powers, right?
We don't have much time, and I know
so
that.
sorry.
I would like to have 2 episodes with you, but let's talk about your adoption with Olivia.
Yes.
What was that always your intention from the very beginning? How did that all come together? Tell me about that whole, Olivia came to live with you, and
so there was a fight. There was a struggle from the onset. It was not my intention, even though there might be some other parties that might say it was, but it was never my intention. My intention was for me to be grandma. I did not want to go into and start raising children all over again, another generation of children. I love being a grandma. That gave me my space when I wanted it, right? But so it was not my intention. But seeing how there was so much that was needed for her to be able to provide for her. And it was vitally important that she got everything that she needed from the one that was caring for her. I was like, well, grandma got to do what grandma got to do.
Yes, she does.
And so that's what I did. And so I fought. I fought for a while. But I'm so grateful that I did, because it was saving grace for me, you know, and it's so important that she continues to know that grandma is here to understand and can relate to what she's going through.
And she has that stability and that permanency to be able to do that. So what was adoption day like?
Oh my gosh. You would have thought that we were celebrities. It was standing room only, but Olivia stole the show. She's so charismatic, and she's such a loving child, and she just brings life in anywhere and everywhere. You know how they say, oh, well, she's the life of the party, right?
Yes.
She brings that party wherever she goes, seriously. So she had the hearts of everyone that was there, and it was such a rewarding new beginning. I'm not going to say an end to one chapter, but it really was just turning a page in the book of life. And so it was a beautiful beginning to a new chapter for us. And I tell you, every time I think about it, it just puts a big
Yes.
gushy grin on my
I can tell the joy is contagious that you have for her, and the love that you have for her is definitely contagious. What message do you have for families that may be watching us today who are struggling with, you know, I have a concern about, you know, the toxicity in one of my family members' relationships, and what do I do? Who do I call? What message would you give to a family who's watching us right now?
With toxicities, you know, identify them, but identify them within yourself first. You have to identify. You have to be able to be that cornerstone, you know, that your family member or your loved one could stand on, could lean on. And it's going to take a lot of that power. It's draining, right? But identify it, and then be able to be there to be in support. Don't push, because if you push, you'll push them away and closer to their perpetrator. So, and educate is key. So you can always
Yes.
We're on social media.
Okay.
So you can always go to move-inc.org.
Okay.
And, you know, we have a lot of information. We're in transition right now, switching from one
the platform
management to another, but you know, the information is still there, and then you can always reach out, can email, but there, like I said, you know, not trying to get hoarded from everyone else. There are other organizations you can look up. We have web on our website. We have where there's local organizations that you could look into in whatever particular area and find the best fit for you. But find that fit for you, because if you want to, again, I have to reiterate, if you want to be able to be there for your loved one, you have to be there for yourself first, because this is affecting you. If it wasn't affecting you, you wouldn't be looking for help.
Yes. Yeah. You have to be okay.
You have to be okay to be able to.
that.
You cannot offer 50% of yourself to 100% problem. Right? You have to be 100% okay in order to be able to give 100%, because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take all of you. And if you don't have all of you in you, how can you give it to someone else?
Well, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on. I wish that we had more time. I can tell you that you are giving 100% and then some to Olivia, and she is, you know, so, you know, I thank you as, you know, someone who worked for the Department of Children and Families for many years.
Thank you so much.
You are, you know, a blessing to your grandchild and to the community who, you know, you are helping based on your own just unthinkable tragedies. If you would like more information about the Department of Children and Families, you can visit us on our website. And this is National Kinship Month, and we encourage you to visit our website to learn more about our kinship work. Thank you.
The water's warm at Jaws Pawn, and we're stocked full of treasures. Big or small, we buy it all. We buy and sell fast rides, power tools, vintage guitars, and so much more. Walk the plank in style with our fine jewelry, diamonds, and watches. Plus, we have a huge selection of the latest video games, including the new PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Jaws Pawn, conveniently located on Meriden-Waterbury Turnpike in Southington and West Main Street in New Britain.